Thank you, Bill. I wanted to thank Bill Holstein. I wanted to thank Sonia Fry. I wanted to thank Jane Riley for organizing this, for inviting me. It's a real honor to be here. The OPC is thriving in these days when it seems like there's a dark cloud over international reporting. The OPC has become this island that we can all retreat to and keep a sense of community, even in news organizations where foreign staffs are being cut back. It's a gem. It's a treasure. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. So here's to all of you. I wanted to thank all of the sponsors as well. Really appreciated this kind of support for bringing up young journalists. It's huge. We try to do our part. It's a small part, but we do try to do what we can. Most of all, I wanted to thank all of these recipients of the OPC Foundation Awards. I mean, congratulations. What unbelievable ideas. I'm over here underlining, thinking, call this one. Let's find out if we can get this report published. Great questions. These are great story ideas. For anyone who feels like these are the days of decline in international reporting, I don't think you need to look much further than the ideas presented by you, the recipients of these foundation grants, to know it is alive and kicking. And here's to all of you. Good luck. Bill asked me to talk a little bit about how, basically, my journey to get to Global Post. But I'm going to do it really quickly because I have 15 minutes. And I thought I would just sort of start out by saying that, that my path in journalism was a very traditional one. That I don't know that it exists that much anymore, sadly. I think there are new avenues that are really exciting. I think this is a great time to be getting into journalism. But the old school way of climbing your way up, I don't know. I'm sad to say it's not really there. I'm thrilled to have had that tradition. And for me, that was really about growing up in Boston, reading the Boston Globe, and wanting to work there my whole life. And, really genuinely got it very early that that's what I wanted to do. I started off reading the Globe. My family had a house painting business with my brothers. My brother had a job at the Boston Herald at night. He'd paint with us during the day. And I'd go in at night and I got to watch Larry Bird in his rookie year, right there, courtside. And I think that sense of being courtside on history as a Celtics fan, or most recently for me in Cairo, is what it's all about. And I've been drawn to that really since I was a kid. And great scenes with my brother at that old tabloid at the Boston Herald. And just remember being in the newsroom with him late one night after running film back for him. And his old night city editor saw me sitting there waiting for my brother to finish up his work. And he looked at me, I was about 16, great corrupting influence, and he said, "Hey kid, you want a drink?" So he leaned back, there was a first aid box on the wall. He leaned back and he opened the first aid box and he had a bottle of vodka in there. And not that it's about the drinking, but it's definitely about the spirit of that old school sense of, hey kid, you want a drink? And it's something that I knew I wanted to be part of really, really young. And so for me, that became working first in radio. I worked for a small public radio station. I did all the kinds of things you do when you're at a small NPR affiliate. I went to Columbia School of Journalism, got a job at the Bergen Record, covered Hudson County for the Bergen Record, spoke some Spanish, worked on that, did some interesting stories, talked them into sending me on a few foreign assignments to Ireland to cover sort of the illegal Irish who were over in Hackensack in full force, or talking them into all kinds of things like letting me go cover the war in Nicaragua because I found out about this thing called Camp Oliver North, where there were actually Contras training in New Jersey. I'd do anything to get sent abroad, but really also had my eyes set on New York. Really wanted to be a reporter in New York. And when you're at Bergen Record covering Hudson County, all you do is look across the river, and there it is. You think I got to get there. And I Daily News and worked there for about 7 years, and they were great years. It was really the last great tabloid war, and I had a great time working in it. For me, that was working with some great editors. Bill Boyle was just a fantastic editor. Pete Hamill, who was part of that tabloid war on many different sides of it. But really the heart of it was a great mentor and influence of mine. And I just want to tell one quick story that has to do with Dennis Hamill, Pete's brother. And this will get me right into Cairo. I was a reporter covering cops in Lower Manhattan in 1993, and I heard a very loud bang. I went out, and then I heard a lot of sirens. As any reporter in Manhattan would do, you start walking toward the sound of the sirens. Walking toward the sound of the sirens, I see smoke pouring out of the parking garage of the World Trade Center. Really just trying to figure out what was going on there. As I'm looking at this, I run into Dennis Hamill, who happens to have two things: a Con Edison hat and a yellow legal pad. He says, "You take the pad, I'll take the hat." And we just walk right past the police lines, right up to the edge of the parking garage. Smoke's coming out. This is 1993. Smoke's coming out, and everyone's thinking, what the hell happened? And we're all thinking it's a generator explosion, or there's some fire that's happened in the subway system, or something's gone on, but something blew up, probably a generator. They strain emergency lighting in the parking garage, and pretty quickly the light goes on, and through the smoke and the sprinkler system shooting everywhere, we saw the 4 to 5 story deep crater that had been left with all the cars piled down in it. And both Dennis and I looked at each other and in the same breath said, "It's a," I won't use that word, "bomb." And none of us thought that's what it was. And that moment of being a street reporter, being on a story, seeing that first glimpse of, they tried to take down the World Trade Center with a bomb, is something I'll never forget. And for me, it began as cop reporting. And that reporting led to following the story really closely. So I went out to Brooklyn, where I found Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, the Egyptian cleric who was the spiritual leader of this group of mostly taxi drivers who were so angry they wanted to take down the World Trade Center. Billy Boyle was city editor, or deputy city editor actually at that point, and driving the story. He just told me to keep going. And so then we go out to Jersey City, and we find the Ryder rental company where the truck was rented. And while we're there, a bunch of FBI guys are in the back, and they said, just you gotta leave right now. You have to leave this premises. So we got sort of thrown out. What we didn't know was going on was they were expecting any minute the driver who had rented the truck to come back to collect his deposit, which was the truck used for the truck bombing. And so the first big break in the case was they had Mohammed Salameh, the Palestinian who rented the truck from the Ryder company, and went for his deposit. And one of the things I loved about the way that story broke was New York City shrugged that story off. It was a crime story. It was about a bunch of losers who tried to blow up the World Trade Center and didn't succeed. And there was a response to that I think was tough and noble and very New York. But we didn't realize what was really happening. We didn't see these forces building. We didn't see that what we were really looking at was nascent Al-Qaeda. And I don't want to claim to have been prescient, because I wasn't. It was Bill Boyle who said to me, he chain smoked, and he said, "You should go." And I said, man of very few words. And I said, "Go where?" And he said, "Just stay on the story." And reading Boyle was like deciphering, you could read anything into it. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You should go to Egypt." And I said, "Really? Okay." So the next day I went to Egypt. I called him from Cairo, and he said, "What are you doing in Egypt?" I said, "He told me to go." He said, "Yeah, usually you get approval for that." I'm here, so we'll start reporting the story. So go to Egypt, and he sends me off. He said, now they're into it. Now they're really into the story. But it's a crime story. It's knocking on doors. I was a police reporter. This was a crime that happened in Lower Manhattan. Who were the perps? Where are the suspects? And I remember this moment of going to the oasis of Fayum, driving through Egypt, and knocking on the door of Sheikh Omar Abdel Rahman, like the way we would in a Brooklyn apartment or in Jersey City. Same thing, following a crime story. It opened me up to realizing there is a story in an unrelenting anger on the streets of these capitals, like Cairo, against U.S. foreign policy that was building. And we wrote a pretty prescient series called Seeds of Terror that was really about all of these forces. I went to Palestine to find out about Mohammed Saleh, the loser who looked for his deposit. We went to Pakistan, we went to Egypt, to Khartoum, and in Khartoum there was the People's Conference was holding the People's Hall rather, held one of the first Islamic conferences where there was a tall emir in white robes, known only as the emir, and it was bin Laden. Zawahiri, the Egyptian doctor who is his deputy, was there. Walter Pincus, God bless his soul, had written one story on this emir, Osama bin Laden. And it was a tiny article, pre-Google, right, when you used to have to photocopy clips. And you go down to the morgue of the Daily News, you get the clips. And I had this tiny, clip packet that was all I could put together before I left. And there is this one tilted photocopied article from Walter Pincus that says it's possible that the World Trade Center bombing was financed by the scion of a construction magnate family of bin Laden. Those threads, that story became what I did for the next, until today, for the next 18 years. But it began as a police story at a great city newspaper where I wanted to work. What really happened, though, was a British editor was hired at the Daily News who didn't quite see the story, was looking at it from the perspective of the IRA, and that there's a fatigue about terrorism. And his great famous phrase was, "No one cares about terrorism, mate." Began to shrink the story down. Boyle saw that I was getting really ticked off, and eventually, to make a long story short, I moved on from the Daily News because Matt Storn called and heard I was pretty disappointed in this and said, "Hey, you want to come back to Boston?" I did. I went to Boston, and I went to the Globe for one reason. I really wanted to be a foreign correspondent. I'd now been out there in the Middle East. I wanted the Middle East Bureau job. I told him that going in, and he said, "If you just, excuse the phrase, kick ass for a few years, I will get you that Middle East correspondent job." And that's what happened. In 1997, I went abroad as Middle East correspondent, and I'm still covering the same story that was the police story in 93. I mean, it's really going. It's still the same story. When the Intifada explodes, it's the same story. And it's a building of really a career of reporting that comes out of being a cop reporter for me. September 5th, 2001, we moved to London, and I'm going to move from being the Jerusalem bureau chief of the Boston Globe to being the London bureau chief. Moving truck arrives the morning of September 11th, 2001. I'm thinking I'm going to cover Europe, wear a blue blazer, take the train to Paris, life's going to be good. And of course, all of our lives changed, the world changed. The events of September 11th launched me right into Afghanistan. I arrive on September 19th, 2001, and that's a story about, again, covering the same story that began in the World Trade Center parking garage. Still covering a cop story, still going on it. And I'm still going today. I was in Kabul for an interview with General Petraeus when Cairo broke. And when I got the call to go to Cairo, it really struck me that this is where my reporting began. And it's coming back home. And I think those themes are really resonant when we want to see them. And they're there if we really want to look at them. I would love to talk about Cairo, but we've all seen the news. I'll just keep it this short. It's the most thrilling and exciting story I've ever covered in my 25 years of reporting. I think it was Sissy who said, "War and chaos will always keep us in business." That's true, and I've covered a lot of war and chaos, but I never had covered a story in the Middle East you saw millions of people rise up and say, that's enough. We're tired of these regimes. And the joy in their faces and the celebrations in the street and the way it cut across all walks of life was so much more thrilling than War and Chaos. And so it is my favorite story I've ever covered. I feel honored to have been there. I want to jump right now, and I can leave open some questions about Cairo. I'll let you know that the reason I went to Cairo was we had a call from PBS Frontline. The Global Post is seeking partnerships, and I think partnerships are a big part of the future of journalism. And I'll come back to that, but it was PBS Frontline that really sent me to Cairo and said, we want you to do this story. So it was really a thrill to be working with them. I'm just huge admirer of the work they do, and it was thrilling to be part of that team. We focused in on the Muslim Brotherhood, and we followed the narrative of all of these events of 18 days of the revolution in Cairo by sticking with this sort of working class Islamist movement, the Muslim Brotherhood, and following that thread. And if there are any questions about that, I'll come back to it. How am I doing on time? I think going from the Globe, basically going from the Daily News to the Globe was a big thrill for me. I really love the Globe. I still do. I still think it's a great news organization. But as we all know, the Globe was hit with the same economic forces that have really done so much damage across the landscape of American media that they had to make tough decisions. One of those tough decisions was they cut their entire foreign reporting staff, and they no longer have a foreign editor. The Boston Globe is not alone in that decision. This has been a decision that's been made by the Baltimore Sun, by the Philadelphia Inquirer, by Newsday. Chicago Tribune is pretty much getting out of the business of foreign reporting. LA Times has had a huge cutback. The networks have cut back dramatically on their foreign coverage. It's a really sad time. If you talk to any of the executives who've made those decisions, they are as sad as we are, or maybe not quite as sad. But they are as disappointed in having to trim their ambitions as we are sad that we can't go out there and do the work. And this reality was really happening around me in a unique year for me, which was I came back from reporting, from being the London bureau chief and being in Afghanistan and Iraq. And the Boston Globe gave me that rehab program for recovering war correspondents called the Nieman Foundation. And I went and did the Nieman Fellowship at Harvard, and it was a year where I had an offer to write a book, and Bob Giles, the curator of the Nieman, said, just don't do it. Just take a year off. That's what this year's about. And I took his advice, and I took Irish poetry, I took life drawing, I went to a music appreciation class with my wife, and you realize that being a journalist is like being in a cult. They never give you time to think. They keep you kind of hungry, on edge, tired, and you never step back. And I just had this year where I stepped back and thought I would like to, if international reporting is going to end, then maybe we need to find a way to start something new. And if we're going to start something new, I'd like to find a way to do sort of an international reporting website. How would we do that? So being a reporter, having no business experience, I thought, that's easy. You call it a nonprofit. You call up those foundations with all that cash and you just get money. And I began to explore Global Post as a nonprofit. And I was able to raise a little bit of money, a few $100,000, which you could do nothing with. And every time I thought I want to break from the Globe and try to do this, I'd be in my basement office, and I have 4 boys, and I'd hear them pounding on the floorboards above me, and think, there's no trust fund here, and I can't leave the Globe. And I really worked hard at it. I worked at it for about a year, trying to figure out how to build this, and then found out that there was Phil Balboni in Boston was thinking about a similar idea. He's a local television executive who had a great career in Boston television, and he wanted to build an international news organization, but he had a real business plan and a for-profit model. And I was invited by him to come and sit down and talk about doing this together. And that is the origin of Global Post. We're both from Boston. We're very different. He's television and an executive. I'm print and I'm the field. He's been mostly local. I've been mostly foreign. He has amazing business skills. I have the field experience and the connections in the field. And we became a team. And we started it in April of 2008. We launched in January of 2009. In those years, we've built a team of 100 correspondents around the world in 70 countries who file every month. About half of those, close to 60, are on contract. We have one of our correspondents is with us here today, Nikki Sebeki, who's our correspondent in Istanbul. We have fantastic talent. Nikki is an amazing photographer. She's a great writer, and she's really, you can see the passion she brings to it, the way she's matured just in 2 years, and doing great work for us, and now doing some reporting from Afghanistan as well. We're lucky to have these great young talents. We also have mid-career correspondents who really want to do this work, and we become a part of their portfolio. We have veteran correspondents like David Greenway, HDS Greenway, who writes a column for us, or Mort Zuckerman, Mort Rosenblum, who writes. I like Mort Zuckerman as well, but he hasn't called. I don't think he needs the money. Mort Rosenblum is a 40-year veteran of AP who now lives in a houseboat in Paris. And Mort can write one of these articles in about 3 hours. I call them 2 cups of coffee. Just give us your 800-word blast from 40 years of experience about what it means if you see Sarkozy going off on the gypsies and what that means politically. And he can write this so elegantly. He can write with great suite. So we have these different tiers. Young people like Nikki, mid-career people like a couple of examples are Matt McAllister, Matt Reese in Jerusalem for us. These are people who've won many OPC awards in their lives, but are out there looking to create a freelance life, and that veteran experience as well. All of them are freelance correspondents. It's basically a network of stringers, sort of a super stringer model writ large. Those correspondents are given, differing contracts, but they're also given shares in the company, and we really want to give them a sense of being entrepreneurs, of being part of what we do. So if we succeed, they can share in that success. The business model, which was created by Phil, has 3 revenue streams. One is online advertising. The second is syndication, and this is where partnerships come in. We have PBS NewsHour, CBS News, NPR.org, and about 25 newspapers that range from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the Newark Star-Ledger, to Newsday, to large international papers like the Times of India, the South China Morning Post. Pretty eclectic mix. And we have a membership model, which is sort of in beta. We're struggling with that. We're encouraging people to join as members. If you join as a member, you get things like conference calls with our correspondents in the field. But those are the revenue streams. We're on our way. We're very confident about the future. We've just launched a redesign of the site yesterday. And it's been really exciting. And I feel like we come into our 3rd year now, feeling like we're going to make it. Like the business model is sound. The horizon looks good. And we continue to have great hopes about growing, but also just about drawing in young talent. So all of you who are OPC Foundation fellowship recipients,